Hello, it's Fazil here. Thank you very much for coming back to the channel, subscribing, commenting, and doing all those sorts of things. I do appreciate. Now, there is this story that has happened on the continent, and all of a sudden it has a link with dictator Museveni. It is the events that happened in Zambia, where a gentleman known as Hakainde Hichilema, also known as HH in Zambia, an opposition candidate who is now the president of Zambia. He won by a majority, uh, by a landslide, with over 1 million votes in the previous election that was held. He's going to be sworn in on Tuesday next week. And after previous attempts, of course, now he is the president. But what is interesting is Edward Lungu, uh, who was becoming a wee bit dictatorial in making, the gentleman who was thrown out or who was voted out by the people of Zambia, who voted massively. Uh, there are some parallels between Lungu as well as Museveni. And we, while making a bit of research, we found out that most of the analysts in Zambia said that Edward Lungu was one of the contributing factors for his downfall, is the people that he was liaising with on the continent, or his so-called friends, that you could call friends. Uh, like they say, birds of the same feathers flock together. Edward Lungu and Museveni, they had a lot in similar. But what is interesting is that, of course, Lungu was learning more of Museveni's tactics, trying to use them in Zambia to entrench himself in power. But the people of Zambia woke up very early and they couldn't let this happen. Now, Mr. Akayinde Hichalema, we all know that this gentleman he has been arrested over 15 times, and he has tried over 5 times to dislodge or to run for president in Zambia, but all has not been successful until this day that it has been successful. Now, so this is the breakdown. So we're going to break down this issue and look at the relation between Edward Lungu as well as Yoweri Museveni, and why Museveni is one of the contributing factors as to why Lungu was voted out of power. Because of course, like there are so many other factors, unemployment, the Chinese influence in the country, as we see in Uganda as well, and all these sorts of things. And why this is really the lessons from Zambia, what they mean for the continent, the region, as well as Uganda as a country as we move forward. Now, in 2016, there was an election in Zambia. Now, in that particular election, of course, these two gentlemen were contesting against each other, but unfortunately, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema was brutally beaten, and all those sorts of things like Museveni does to his, people who oppose him. Now, what is interesting, especially on African dictators or dictators in making, or autocrats and all these kind of people, one of the most the task they have to ensure is, number one, make sure you win the election. Make sure that you show the world that you have won, irrespective of how you win. Whether you are cheating, whether you're beating your opponents, whether you're stuffing ballots, anything, do that. Now, the second thing is, after winning this election, legitimize it by looking for people who will congratulate you, number one. Number two, by looking for people who will say that, who will back your illegitimate government, like with Museveni. So in 2016, it comes as no surprise that the first person who congratulated Mr. Edward Lungu after what he had done to the people of Zambia, it was, you guessed it right, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now, of course, we know very well that Museveni has a lot of businesses in Zambia in terms of construction, in terms of hotels and all that kind of stuff, but that is not the topic for today, but we are looking at the politics. So when Mr. Museveni congratulated Lungu for his brutal way of cheating and beating the Zambian people into acceptance, and then getting these guys like, hey guys, now, I have done the 70% of the work. The Electoral Commission has announced me, so start congratulating me. So the Musevenis congratulated him and all those other, African leaders, because this is a very big problem in Africa, whereby these leaders beat their fellow people. There is a way these African leaders are kind of, there's a way they work together with each other, whereby, irrespective of how someone wins the election, he is assured that the first people that are going to congratulate him are African leaders. And Museveni is up there on top of the list. And other dictators like Teodoro Obiang Basogo of Equatorial Guinea, and so many others. So, Hakainde Hichilema, the now president of Zambia, came out and told Museveni to apologize to the people of Zambia in 2016 for congratulating Edward Lungu in an election that was brutal, that was very brutal, and that had been stolen. So this is what Mr. Hakainde Hichilema told Museveni during that time. So according to Lusaka Times, it says that Zambia's main opposition leader, President Hakainde Hichilema, has demanded that Uganda President Museveni apologizes to Zambians for stating that the elections were free and fair. Hichilema says Zambia is a sovereign state which has its own laws, adding that the Ugandan president is out of order to comment on the country's political situation. He says that the election results are being challenged in the courts and that Ugandan President Museveni comments are tantamount to contempt of court as the matter is in court. So that is some of the backlash that Mr. Hichilema said. He went on to say that, and Mr. Hichilema has since called on the Ugandan High Commissioner to render a public apology on behalf of their president over the utterances that the UPND should stop funding violence and accept the election results. I mean, I think we have heard this line all over the place, right? We have really had this line, Museveni using it, that, oh, it is always the opposition funding violence. So that same line, he uses it against the NUP in Uganda, FDC, and all these other parties. And it is the same line that he is using against opposition parties all over the continent. So Mr. Hichilema cautions that the Ugandan president will not be allowed to introduce his style of leadership in Zambia, as it is detrimental to development. Upon his arrival in Zambia, Museveni warned the opposition to stop funding violence and accept the August 2016 election, a claim that the opposition has refuted. Absolutely ridiculous that we have a president. I mean, is this another district of Rachtura? Like, do you think that Zambia is a district of Rachtura where you can go and start telling the opposition that, yo, you guys stop funding violence, this is my other territory? It is a sovereign state, for heaven's sake. If you have gone there to legitimize your fellow dictator, legitimize him, leave the people of Zambia alone. Because look here, now the people you are telling to stop funding violence, they are the ones in power. How are you going to deal with them? In 2016, you were there telling them that they are funding violence, they are doing, you said all sorts of words. It is the same thing that is happening in Kenya. Now we are going to see, because Museveni's group of friends is now narrowing. The same people that he was out there lambasting and telling all sorts of words, now they are the people in power. I think you should have kept your gunpowder dry. All of a sudden now, they are the same people you have to deal with, because there are so many businesses of Museveni's businesses in Zambia, in terms of construction, in terms of hotels and all this kind of stuff. Trust me, it's not going to be a joyride for you. And I believe that now that HH is in power, so much is going to be uncovered in Zambia, because you thought Lungu was a bad student. You taught him how to win an election, Museveni style, but he got an F. And that's why he failed you. Now, carrying on with this story, we also understand that in 2020, when of course Museveni did whatever he did, beat people up, and used all sorts of force that he used, arrested the opposition. Mr. Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu arrested him, beat him up, arrested his supporters and all this kind of stuff. Then afterwards, he declared, he switched off the internet, did all these sorts of things. And afterwards, he came out and announced himself as the legitimate ruler of Uganda, that he won the election, which is really interesting. And guess who was among the first people who congratulated Museveni? Well, you guessed it right, because Edward Lungu had to reciprocate the favor that Museveni did for him in 2016. So it was done for Lungu to also legitimize Museveni's dictatorship. So Lungu comes out and congratulates Museveni. Museveni, on his Facebook page, he congratulated him and like, the cliche sort of line that, oh, we look forward to working with you, blah, 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 blah. So that's what happened. Now, when that happened, of course, it received a lot of backlash. And people within Zambia said, the analysts, they said, like, I mean, it would not hurt. You would just have stayed away from Museveni. Because Museveni right now, he's a spoiler of any president on the continent of Africa or any person on the continent of Africa. That's why you see he has not been invited on several events and things of that sort. Now, this is according to the Diggers in newspaper, one of the analysts in Zambia said that in an interview, Kabwiri said, while it was normal for presidents to congratulate each other following election triumphs, the case of the Ugandan dictator Museveni put Zambia in an awkward position. Congratulating a president is a normal thing that presidents do. But sometimes when you hear there is an outcry in that country, the people are saying the elections were not free and fair, I think it's only reasonable that staying away from congratulating such kind of leaders who are elected under those circumstances, because it doesn't show good commitment to democracy. So in my view, I think the president should have stayed away from congratulating Museveni, because the circumstances under which the elections were held puts Zambia in an awkward position in terms of supporting illegitimately elected people, said Kabumwiri, a former chief government spokesperson and Rowan PF member of parliament. So this was against the backdrop of Edgar Lungu congratulating Museveni on his Facebook page. So it means that the people of Zambia were keenly watching the events in Uganda. We are keenly watching, of course, because it brings us together, because these two presidents, Lungu and the dictator Museveni, they had some sort of a bromance. The two of them, like they're drinking together, they're enjoying themselves and all this kind of stuff. Now, according to the Black Star News as well, it says that Zambia's analyst says President Lungu was voted out due to his friendship with Ugandan dictator Museveni. Now, he says, quote, a defining point that Zambians were looking at was the issue of their president or leader associates himself with. I respect other countries and I don't want to cause a diplomatic row with other countries. But Edward Chagwa Lungu made it clear who his friends were. And this unsettled a lot of citizens who know what his friends stand for. For example, Museveni of Uganda, who has been in office 6 times already. That unsettled Zambians who saw the tactics employed by Edward Chagwa Lungu as similar to that of Museveni. So, like you can see, right? Like you can see that these two people were friends. And of course, Lungu was picking lessons from Museveni that, like, hey man, tell me, what's in your toolbox? What can I use now? So Museveni tells him he's on a Zoom call with Lungu. He's like, just get Hichalema, beat him up so bad. Beat Hichalema, throw him in prison. Hichalema is thrown in prison. Then Museveni is like, my Lungu is like, oh man, things have failed. So Museveni is like, okay, I think switch off the internet now. Okay, Lungu goes, switches off the internet. Then Lungu is like, no, but the judiciary has, the judiciary has already blocked this issue of switching off the internet. Museveni is like, oh, so you didn't fix the judiciary? Man, that is the first thing you should have done. Make sure that the judges are on your side. You didn't do that? Museveni is like, oh, now look at this one. So now he's like, okay, tell me, is the police on your side? Is the army on your side? So tell me about the security forces. Lungu is like, recently we had hired some Chinese to be part of the Zambian police force. Museveni is like, really? Don't you have some people from your own whatever tribe or region to put them in the forces to listen to your orders? I mean, the same tactics. And he's like, okay, don't you have some money? Lungu is like, man, I've already run the country bankrupt. The Chinese loans are choking on my neck. There are no jobs. There is no revenue. Everything is just falling apart. The economy is falling apart. So Museveni is like, on a Zoom call, Museveni is like, bro, I think just brace yourself for the worst, because I believe that I think here we have come to an end. So Lungu was kicked out. Couldn't control the social media. He couldn't control the security forces. He couldn't control the judiciary. He couldn't even control his own country. Couldn't even run his own country. The country has been choking on debts. The economic situation has been so bad. And of course, there is a lot that is expected from Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. But after doing all this kind of stuff to the country, things like where we saw stories from Zambia, the Chinese taking over the broadcasting media of Zambia. I mean, that's really sad. Things where we saw that the Zambians had recruited the Chinese police officers. Now, you should understand that in Zambia, there are over 20,000 Chinese police officers. I have nothing against Chinese investors or anything, but I mean, this was out of control. Like police officers in the Zambian police. I mean, Lungu, I think this was a deserved win for Hakainde Hichilema. Now, we believe that people for Hakainde Hichilema and leaders that are propping up who are wiping out the old generation of Museveni's friends and people of his years or his age group. We believe that this is a new dawn, or this is a rebirth of the African continent. If we have more leaders who are ready not to endorse, who are ready not to work with dictators, or who are ready not to work with leaders on the continent of Africa who against human rights, who are against the rule of law, who are beating their own citizens, who win elections Museveni style, I think Africa will be destined for greatness. But for as long as we still have leaders who congratulate other leaders after they have beaten their people to the pulp and they have killed them and done all sorts of violent things, then we are just going back to the dark ages. Because literally, as a continent it has been for the past 35 years. I mean, we are running the continent as barbarians. We don't have any sort of standards as a continent. Anything just passes. So it's a mixed bag. So what do you expect people outside the continent will say? They'll say, African continent, you see these people are all congratulating each other after they have beaten the other. Let us also follow into line. So this is a new beginning for Zambia, as well as a new beginning for the continent. Now, to paint a broader picture, that is why you see people like William Ruto now, they found themselves in a very tough situation, whereby they are working with Museveni. And by working with Museveni, his entire presidential campaign has gone into ruins. And by the way, the things in Kenya are getting serious. Two fishermen, I think yesterday, were killed in Kenya by Ugandan forces. Literally, that is how things are getting serious. 34 Ugandans were expelled from Kenya. I know if you're a Ugandan living in Kenya, Museveni is not going to protect you. What he's doing, he's escalating a situation where he wants violence between Uganda and Kenya. And what we are seeing is that if you're a Ugandan living in Kenya, be careful, because the Kenyans might retaliate. But the Kenyans should understand that we are Ugandans. We do not condone the actions of Museveni, killing fishermen from another country. That is Museveni and his cabal of people and his henchmen looking for violence, looking for war. Do not play into his trap. You should understand that the Ugandans living in Kenya as well, they are suffering as those fishermen that are suffering. Museveni is one person who can get you now wherever you are. The case of Lumbuya and all these other people, the bloggers and all these other people. And if he wants to exchange you for another dictator on the continent, he can literally get a Ugandan and exchange him for another dictator on the continent. That's what he can do. So guys, we congratulate Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. We shall be following the story in Zambia. Mr. Lungu, I'll end with the quote that Hakainde Hichilema told Mr. Lungu that he said in his acceptance speech, "Don't worry, you'll be okay. You won't face any retribution or get tear gassed." Mr. Hichilema said, this is according to the BBC. So that's it for today, guys. Endeavor to subscribe to the channel and also follow our updates that we bring you from Uganda and the rest of the world. Thank you very much. Have a blessed one. Bye-bye.